Let's take a look at some charts, figures, graphs, and information on Polkadot for BraveNewCoin. So DOT is another one of these proof of stake chains. What makes DOT better than the others? I couldn't tell you off the bat. We'll find out in the coming weeks and months. They've launched parachains, which to me are ICOs, IEOs, whatever, by another name. Again, we will see what comes out of this. There's promise, and then there's execution, and then there's consequences. We'll see what happens, right? We'll see if it brings down the chain. We'll see if fees go up. It's still extremely early for anything Polkadot related. Now their website says, they can slice it and dice it and spin it and blend it better than anybody else. Kind of what they have to say. But how do you stand out in a crowd? There are more and more proof of stake chains. And ultimately, how do you compete against ETH? How do you compete against the devs on ETH, the moat that ETH has? How do you bring people into the fold? Maybe it's parachains. I don't know. My opinion is kind of irrelevant. It doesn't really matter. We'll see what happens, right? Will parachains move the needle on the DOT price, token price? Is that happening now? You could argue it is. If you need DOT to buy into the parachain, then that's beneficial to the token. I mean, we've seen that before with ICOs on ETH. We've also seen the flip side of that. If these parachains need to sell DOT down for whatever reason, if they have a DOT treasury, right, that's going to be detrimental in a bear market. We've seen this movie before. I don't know if that's how this is going to function. I'm just saying most of this stuff is just ideas that are reskinned over and over again. And they're treating it like it's some new paradigm, when really it probably isn't. Now, they did do an ICO. They did a couple ICOs. They had some issues with holding onto their funds early on because they were hacked or exploited. Those are still sitting on ETH. I'm not going to bring that up or talk about it further, but just know that happened. They have had a private public sales. You can see all the amounts listed here, 2017. So the launch of not only the chain, but parachains and everything else that comes after that is kind of 5 years in the works, 4 years in the works at this point. So it's important to know, was it an ICO? Who holds these coins? And what does the supply schedule look like? It is inflationary. It is dynamic. And currently in December 2021, we're seeing, or thereabouts, we're seeing a ramp up, most likely, of rewards over time. It looks as though anyone who wanted to sell from the ICO has now been given that opportunity. And you'd have to dig deeper as far as who's still holding from the ICO. You can do that by looking at coin age, that sort of thing, custody, seeing who's holding it where. I don't have that information in front of me readily accessible, but that's how you do it. And like the case of Link, once they start selling stuff down at a repetitive rate or whatever, you can see that pretty easily. So let's talk about parachains for a second. Again, I don't know much about it. To me, it's just ICOs. I get it, community. It's not ICOs. It's something completely groundbreaking and absolutely amazing. But it just looks like sidechains or whatever else to me. Ultimately, again, we will see what comes out of this. But the biggest thing, the most important thing right now, as we sit here, is fees. If fees can stay low, if they can maintain low fees, if they can port everything that makes ETH successful onto DOT and make it a lower fee, it's a winner. That's it. That's all there is to it. It's really black and white. It's binary. You can say DOT has all sorts of issues on a technical level, but most people don't really care. They never will. And they list, everything here. Identity, gaming, NFTs, DAO, blah, 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 which is good. They should just copy everything that already exists, put it on their chain. Parachain, kind of like parasitic. That's what they need to do in order to compete with AVAX, with all the bridging stuff. Like, that's all you need to do. Copy what works, make it slightly better with fees, throughput, whatever, and do that before ETH goes full 2.0. Polkadot does have a kind of weird hybrid consensus, Grandpa Babe. I'm not going to go into it, but it's important to know that it's not exactly proof of work. It's not proof of stake. It's kind of something a bit different that hasn't really been a thing before. They also break down as to why they're better than ETH 2.0, and ultimately, we'll see, right? ETH doesn't have 2.0 yet. DOT isn't arguably up to its maximum capacity or whatever yet. So we'll find out when ETH goes 2.0 who the ultimate winner is down the road from there. Because it's proof of stake, we have to look at validators, most of which are anonymous, or at least on this website, Polkascan.io, are anonymous. I don't like seeing that because I don't know who holds the keys to the castle here. Who are the governing bodies? How does that work? I can see Polkadot. I can see Dokia. How many of these are in Asia? How many of these are VCs? How many of these are exchanges? How many of these are just average Joe, right? You really need to know that to take a full grasp of how decentralized or not the chain is. And I'm sure that information will come to light over time. If you look at the staking stats, 56% of the network is participating, and you're getting a 5% adjusted reward that's after inflation, which is probably one of the best on any chain, any proof of stake chain, as far as rewards are concerned. Lending USDC right now is around 9 to 10% on Maker Comp Aave. So that's still better. But if you believe in DOT having some sort of future in the near term to midterm, and you want to get interest on that position, the adjusted rewards are actually pretty good. You'll see rewards touted pre-inflation most of the time to sort of entice people, in my opinion. But you really got to know what is the true number, right? Because a lot of these proof of stake chains have 1% or less on the adjusted reward per year. So that's really important to know what the real math is there. As far as on-chain stats, active accounts per day, just absolutely roofing, exactly what you want to see with any network. Transaction counts slowly creeping up here. Not going to write home to Ma about the intensity of rise in transactions, but it is rising. Average transaction values basically just flat. Nothing really to comment on there. I don't know how parachains are going to affect this. We'll find out. We'll find out if you see more transactions on DAWN, if that's baked in. I'm sure that's on a technical level obvious, but we'll know what we know when more than just like KSM and whatever else is active takes off. For example, ADA is releasing a OpenSea clone on the chain, right? Like let's say we get an OpenSea clone on DOT. What happens to the chain? Now that's step one, because we know what happens on ETH. If we release OpenSea on a parachain or whatever on DOT and it's better than on ETH, okay, that's a win for DOT, right? If you can bring people there, bring products there, that's the next step. If you build it, they will come. You definitely don't want to build just an empty cathedral. Looking at NVT, inverse metric of economic utility relative to market cap, NVT has risen quite a bit from July and just kind of flat here. So that's more bearish than bullish. It says the market cap is rising faster than on-chain activity. Active addresses, however, continue to increase, very similar to the active accounts by day metric. And you can't get bearish on anything new, especially it looks like this. If it's proof of stake, if it's junk shenanigans, I don't care. This is something, right? So you can't ignore that. Looking at MVRV versus price, for most coins, the 2x multiple is where they top out. MVRV is a measure of market cap versus on-chain activity more directly than MVT is. At a 2x multiple, it means the market cap is 2 times greater than the on-chain activity, the realized market cap. If we go to the full history here, you can see MVRV just continues to decline sort of irregardless of price. I think you just need more data. Like anything DeFi related, we need more data to know how to read this. I think it's too early. You can see in January, MVRV was 3, price kept going while MVRV was declining. Currently, MVRV is slowly rising while price is at all-time highs. So from that perspective, it looks better than it did in January because despite the rise in price, you're seeing more on-chain activity here. So this, to me, looks much more bullish than NVT does here. Looking at Polkadot, Google Trends worldwide since June 2020, we are seeing a breakout in Google Trends here to new all-time highs, which makes sense. They released parachains. They've got price all-time highs. People are trying to figure out what this thing even is, right? How can they gamble on it, make money on it? Where can they trade it? What is the price? That sort of thing. All that's going to show up in the Google Trends here, and this is exactly what you'd expect from a coin that's pushing all-time highs. Flipping gears to technicals on Kraken on the daily chart here, .USD. For the most part, this thing is actually traded extremely technically, regardless of what was going on with the chain or with the market. Had this cup and handle triple bottom in November 2020, like everything else, took off like everything else, triple topped head and shoulders kind of like everything else, then a triple bottom, inverted head and shoulders like everything else. And now all chains across the board, the big ones anyway, have this cup and handle characteristic and or pushing all-time highs. ETH obviously very similar to this. So the analysis for all of them is exactly the same. You pick a high, you pick a low. In this case, all-time high, a local low, and it gives you, with fibs, it gives you extensions and targets. So this is the 75 to 85 level up here. I like that as the next push up. On trend, it's obviously bullish, and it's good to see this trend flip bearish and then reflip bullish. That just confirms this was support and this was the bottom. this should lead to bullish continuation, especially in price discovery all-time high type of conditions. What you don't want to see up here is declining volume, declining RSI. All that spells bear div type stuff. And that isn't just DOT, that's everything. There's no div on RSI per se, but volume has kind of flattened out here since beginning of October. So as this pushes all-time highs, you definitely want to see this pick up steam on volume. With the cloud, if anything's at all-time high, then yeah, the cloud's going to be bullish. Cloud told you to get in back here end of September, October, because it was above the cloud. Told you that there was an edge-to-edge here in August. So everything makes sense to me here, and support is currently around 35, 38 based on the Kijun. If the market goes flat up here, including DOT, what you're going to see is this TK separation. Now, it's not dramatic. It's kind of similar to what happened over here, but it sets the tone for momentumless price action, which risks mean reversion, in this case, back to 35 to 38. I still like that as a buy the dip. The trend overall is still fine. It's still well above the 50 and the 200. So things look fine on trend. Even against BTC, this thing looks ready for all-time highs. Crisscross on it, 5,200 happened in August. Since then, it's held above the 200. It's now above all its volume resistance. You could argue maybe inverted head and shoulders here, whatever, doesn't matter the chart pattern. Whatever this is certainly more bullish than bearish, and trend metrics love it. So again, you don't want to see declining volume. You don't want to see declining RSI. But the target for this is around 140,000 sats, 150,000 sats. Definitely a really good move as far as upside is concerned. And from a risk reward perspective, my initial stop loss wouldn't be until 55K sats, basically this low here. If you treat this as a cup and handle, then your stop loss would be at whatever the local low prior to the breakout would have been. So that's around 55K. So let's say this breaks out to 111,000 sats, fails. What do you do then? Well, your stop loss is still between 55 and 60. Usually if price goes to the expected direction, you're going to move up your stop loss to break even or near break even at that point. That's generally how most people trade that. .eth doesn't look as bullish to me as .btc does. It's got this multi-month bear div here. RSI just continues to get lower and lower and lower. Price continues to go higher and higher and higher. Trend metrics, though, on the 12-hour like it. It is divving into volume resistance. So this probably needs a bit of a reset before it can have strength against ETH, but it's worth just tracking this. If you're truly agnostic and you're trying to min-max P&L, what do you care if it's DOT or ETH, right? At the end of the day, you don't. Nobody should, right? You might have feelings one way or the other. You might have cold storage. Cool. This isn't about feelings. This is about making money. So if DOT is outperforming ETH or vice versa, and you can see that on the technicals here, then just, I'm going for it, right? If DOT is death crossing at the top like it did here, there's no reason to hold it over ETH. There's just none. Kind of the same thing with September. If DOT is golden crossing, bull crossing, then that says, yeah, we should expect higher highs. Something else to watch is DOT against SOL. And I like how this chart looks for DOT because SOL just continues to moon in the face of DOT, kind of mooning slower. I like that this is basing. I like that this is trying to Adam and Eve, ascending triangle, something. It's trying to find a bottom here. Tons of volume. This isn't a real pair anywhere. You just have to make it up on TradingView, but based on that volume calculation, there's a ton of volume at this level. So will SOL outperform DOT this run? I don't know, but I would watch this. If you're trading BTC, ETH, DOT, SOL, or XRP, whatever, just look at all the charts like this and just be honest with yourself. Does this look like a bottom for DOT against SOL? To me, it kind of does. Does it look strong against BTC? Definitely. Does it look strong against ETH? Yes, but it's divvying into volume resistance. So that will help inform your rotations, hopefully, and allow you to step aside from whatever the fundamentals are, because ultimately, to me, all these proof-of-stake chains are basically the same. Last, I'll just mention the ETH BTC fund and DeFi portfolio I trade for Techemy Capital on Enzyme.finance, a non-custodial portfolio management tool where you can send ETH or USDC, or just watch what I'm doing. You can see everything, including AUM, performance, allocation, all the vaults I'm in on EarnComp and Aave, as well as the trades in the trades tab down below. That's all I have for this one. Like, dislike, comment, share, subscribe, and happy trading.